Hey, Jerry here, Execute Fitness Second Chance program, and this is an extension video of our nutrition metabolic calculation module. So what we have here, we have to talk about metabolic flexibility, and basically this is an extension of the video because I want to teach you the difference between just knowing the calories you should be consuming and when a calorie indeed is not really a calorie, right? Because obviously as we experience metabolic inflexibility or insulin resistance, or those kind of people that not only can burn with a healthy metabolism just fat or just sugar, they burn both, then we have what is called metabolic inflexibility. So let me just start off by making you understand what that is. In a healthy metabolism, we have most of the organs that you can see listed up here consuming almost exclusively sugar and a small little bit of protein. While the muscle, specifically, not only obviously when you're working out, that would be sugar, but when you're at rest, they feed themselves with healthy fat or with fat in general. And of course, if you're not eating too much or if you're eating under your calorie maintenance, this is when, right, your muscle tend to burn the fat that is stored within your cells, so basically from your body. And that's basically happens here, right? As we eat, as you can see on top, insulin gets stimulated, and we tend to store fat momentarily. Then when we don't eat, we tend obviously to let the fat go. As you see, obviously, when do we lose most of the fat? Realistically, when we don't eat and when we sleep, right? This is when we have unhealthy metabolism. This is the reflection of a healthy metabolism, and as you did already on top your metabolic calculation, as you should have posted already in the group about your metabolism, this is where you actually should get most of the results. Now, if you have an inflexible metabolism, things are a little bit different, and that's generally what happens. In an inflexible metabolism, you tend, unfortunately, to burn when you work out or when you eat. You burn mostly sugar, but when you're at rest, and this is the key, as you saw, the key is when you get actually rid of most of the fat and when you rest, you tend to still burn sugar and fat together, right? So this is the problem, because the problem now, the body doesn't really know what to burn. So we really need to teach your body either to burn fat or to burn sugar, okay? Basically, we're experiencing what is called metabolic toxicity. As we get here this nice little clock, gold clock on the left, the rusty, the rusty clock on the right, basically telling you what that you have. Metabolic toxicity or insulin resistance or obesity, that's pretty much created by this current state within your within your metabolism. So what do we do? What do you need to do? Definitely you don't need to do a detox diet. So toxicity doesn't mean like literally that you're experience toxins in the metabolism. What you experience is basically the inability of burning the correct fuel or obviously the right macro. You have it here. That's what it's called, insulin resistance. You see the symptoms on top. You will see constant hunger, your inability to lose weight, you crave for sugar, you have migraines, you're experiencing fatigue, and you can see on the bottom, especially in women, you get what is called at time acne, facial hair, infertility, hair loss, a bunch of weird symptoms that at times, and this is not a coincidence, when I talk to people right in the beginning before signing up for the program, they tell me they tell me they might have a metabolic problem, right? As they're overweight or obese, right? Some of the people, they tend to feel like they have a problem. Realistically speaking, they might have just experienced some hormonal imbalance due to the insulin resistance, and that's create what all these sort of symptoms that you feel like you're having something really bad, then sometimes you get tested for allergy, right? And like you get no results with it, because realistically speaking, you're not really getting any problem. It's just you need to fix insulin resistant, which is really fixable, but it does take some effort and doing the right things. This is what we have here, and basically this can be a cell, it can be a fat cell, it can be a muscle cell, and basically I'm going to go ahead and describe you what it is that we experience here. Obviously, as I put on the bottom, not only carbs raise insulin, that's the deal. There is some fatty meats, there is some dairy that raise insulin anyway, and it's been known right now in research that even some other food other than carb raise insulin. So for those of you think that you don't need to eat any carbs, this is not the case. So let's for example understand. Let's pretend that we have here a fat cell, right? As you tend to eat, our food, the small little particle becomes really sugar, glucose, or it becomes fat, and basically they get stored inside fat cells. So when we need it, right? The fat cells or your body, your muscle demands whatever the energy coming from the fat cells, and the fat cells release triglycerides. So release this energy particles into the body, and of course they get used when they need to be used, right? When we start experiencing things like insulin resistance, or the fat cell become more greedy because maybe you overate for a long period of time because you're not moving so much, they tend to kind of like hold on to this small little particle instead of letting them go, right? And what happens is it's not like like you're not really getting fat because you're eating more. It's more like you eating more because you're getting fat, because your body tends to hold on to this particle inside the cells, and of course your insulin tend to raise, your sugar level tend to raise, destroying your muscle basically, instead of coming from the fat, and basically it requires more food, and you keep eating, and of course this also goes for the muscle, of course, the muscle cell. As you eat more sugar, and let's pretend now that the yellow things are glucose, as you see up there, there is also, which is not put here, there is also what is called the insulin, and of course there would be something like on the side taking all these yellow things and putting it inside the the fat cell or the muscle cell. And as you see here on the last slide, the overflow paradigm is basically what it means, that you put a lot of insulin there, forming fat cells. So basically, it doesn't really act as a fat storage; it acts almost as a brake, meaning like instead of letting the fat flow, or better say, instead of the sugar be able to flow through and actually being used into with muscle, it gets stored even though when it's not supposed to be necessary. Not because he wants to store it as fat, but because the muscle cells, they no longer respond to insulin. So it's more like insulin, like I said, it's not a hormone that basically stores fat. It's almost like it's almost like making you fat by default, because obviously the sugar, instead of going into the muscle, like I said, when it's needed, now at rest, it still like don't really respond anymore. So we have chronic level of insulin raised in your body even when you sleep, and that creates this lack of fat loss. Not so much fat gain, but lack of fat loss. And that's why sometimes you get people staying on the same time even by eating a lot less. Of course, the key, what it is, and now we're gonna go deep into the key and what exactly how to fix this problem. How do we get flexible metabolically again, which is the key, right? Not definitely by eating less carbohydrates. The honest idea would be to eat less carbs. And again, I'm not knocking down keto as as many people maybe think that I'm doing. I'm just saying, just you not eating carbohydrates, that's not obviously the best way to do it, because otherwise for diabetics, which are really experiencing what I'm actually talking about, insulin resistant times 10, all the guidelines for diabetes, they would completely take off carbohydrates, which is not the case. They tend to tell you to eat low glycemic carbohydrates. They tend to tell to find your carbohydrate limit, as we say. So basically, we need to reteach your body either to burn fat or to burn carbs. And obviously, giving a bigger deficit in calorie, you're going to be experiencing what is called fat loss. As we see here, by nature, we observed, not only obviously by my empirical research, but by research in general, and this again is not a rule, it's not something you can apply for everybody, but for most people, for most women at least, over 35% or over, I want to say The one you see here is a good 30% because usually it would be more than that. But 35% and up, you tend to burn more fat, right? Because obviously you are a bit insulin resistant by nature because the fat is an organ, and of course it tends to be insulin resistant itself. As you get closer and closer to 15%, you become more like a sugar burner. Now, doesn't mean that you should, if you're over 35%, you cannot be a sugar burner. Not really. And I'm gonna teach you how to make you become more of a sugar sensitive person. Obviously here we need to understand again, more than the calorie you're burning with exercise, you need to understand mainly the type of exercise what you're burning in depth. That's gonna teach you to recognize burning a type of macro within you doing exercise. Not so much give you an indication of what you should be eating, but more than anything else to make you understand what's going on in your body. As you do HIIT interval training or resistant training in the gym, obviously in that time you burning more sugar, right? What happens then after though? You switching automatically on burning more fat for the whole rest of the day. And this happened by nature because obviously your body wants to compensate. What I put on top is because you should understand, and you don't work out to burn calorie. You work out to make your body a better burner of what we call, obviously, a better sugar burner or a fat burner. That should be your your main objective. As you see here, each 100 calorie, and this is an example, by percentage, 70% is usually carbs that you're burning, 30% is usually fat, right? So you can see that you're burning 4 grams of fat in an hour of training. Doesn't mean that, resistant training should never be done. Of course not. In fact, it's the actual opposite. You should be, as you see people that, train in the gym all the time, or do sprints, or do interval training, high interval training. They have a body and they look almost too ripped. Sometimes they're even more ripped than others, because of course it doesn't really matter the calorie you're burning on that hour. That's why I say it all the time. If you get trained by a personal trainer for an hour and you don't get results, definitely it's not because the trainer is bad, or definitely it's not because you should not be training with a personal trainer for an hour. It is because you're probably not doing the right choices when you're not training, okay? And this is the actually other side. As you see here, when you do more aerobic activity, jogging, Zumba, whatever, you're burning more fat and of course a little bit of sugar, but the fat is so small that you're burning that it doesn't really make any difference anyway, right? So as you see here, burning on the time you're working out small little amounts of fat, and then you basically become a sugar burner again. So what is the take-home point? Is for those of you that are like 2 hours on the treadmills or stuff like that and thinking that burning more calorie it will make a difference. It maybe make a difference when you're at bodybuilding stage, when you need to get to stage when you go from 15% to 10% body fat or lower, right? Here you see, of course, 100 calorie burn, you get about 70% coming from fat and 32% coming from carbs. So yes, of course you're burning mainly fat, but as you see, 7 grams each 100. So if you end up burning 300 calories, you're burning about maybe 20 grams of fat. And now, as we get to here, and you see that 1 kilogram of fat, yield 7,000 calories, you do understand that you should not be working out to lose fat, right? Or you do understand that working out and counting the calorie when you work out, it doesn't really make you result in a fat loss, right? You're working out because you want to get your engine, your body, to work better and to burn better at rest. Also, another thing that I wanted to explain about what I just said before, now there is some science saying that obviously, hyperplasia, which is basically creating more cells, can happen even after when you're 15 or 20 years of age. The most part, obviously, the hyperplasia, getting new fat cells it was thought to happen only before that. Now we know that it's actually not the case. So for the most part, your fat cell tend to get bigger or smaller. They don't tend to increase in number, right? As you have, obviously 35 and up, you have big fat cells. They also are insulin resistant because they don't have what is called adiponectin, which is basically an hormone. As they get smaller, as you get lower than 20% and lower, you get a smaller, more adiponectin, and that's create insulin sensitive instead, which is the opposite basically to be insulin resistant. So how do you get this to happen? This is a phenomenon that happen, and also, of course, another indication of you not being able to being insulin sensitive is the number of mitochondria, which is this small little element here that you would see in each cell of your body. And for those of you that does any lab work, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Mitochondria have to increase in numbers and in size. Obviously, more flexible will be your metabolism, higher is the number, higher is the size of the mitochondria. So how do you get that to happen? High interval training plus gym, okay, which weight training. And of course, we need to find what I call to be a balance between the two, because some people will need more than other. This also goes into body type that you will learn in week number 2, in case that obviously you didn't probably just start in the program, so you didn't even see that yet. So what next? What to do? Again, balanced nutrition, and I'm talking about medium carb. If you have experiencing insulin resistance, I would go from low carb to medium carb. I would definitely not go to keto. I would definitely not take off the carbohydrates, because that's gonna exacerbate the problem. Obviously, how do we fix this problem in fast? Hypocaloric insulin fixes insulin resistance. So we really need to go hypocaloric, and we're talking about here sometime 20 to 30% less cut. So we're talking about, in the beginning, very aggressive cut, as we do in the program for a few weeks, just to make sure that you actually first of all, you start losing, if that's what your goal is, and you really change your own metabolic profile. Of course, training out of your comfort zone, I said it before. This is actually true for everything in life. If you go out of your comfort zone, and you can see on top is only 2% of the population here, you experience good things, right? As in life, as in taking action, as in starting this program for most people was, it gets uncomfortable because you know you're going to be doing things that you're not used to do, right? But as you experience that, you experience change, you experience happiness. So in training, what it means to get out of your comfort zone, it means that if you go to run every day, me telling you that you have to run for 20 minutes, that's not out of your comfort zone. But for a person that never run out of breathless for 20 minutes, this is out of your comfort zone. So whatever is for you something that you don't usually do, that's probably a start to create a better mitochondria and a better insulin profile within your metabolism. As you get more advanced, you're going to learn how to cycle the days, cycle not only the macros but also the carbs. You're going to go from getting low calorie, low carb days to high carb days, to making a real, especially when you work out or you go for a long run or whatever the case might be, carb loading, right? We need to experience cycle carbs, cycle macros for some days as you get more advanced, because of course your body is going to be more demanding with certain nutrients and macros as you get closer and closer to the results. It must be realistically to you, of course. Speaking for myself, I myself should go at times into a low carbohydrates or most like keto diet at times. It's not realistic for me, because you cannot hold it more than a couple of days. So how you're gonna get to the results that you want? You need to take a longer route. In my case, cutting calories and obviously do some microcycling, macros a few days a week, you will probably tend to create a better results. As you see here, getting abdominals or getting to a fat percentage you desire, you really need to get out of your comfort zone. So if realistically for you is pulling weights, you must do it, and of course knowing that you have to do it. But if it's not realistically for you, always tend to find a strategy around it. Okay, so hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you haven't posted yet in the group, please do so, because obviously as we get to know, if you think that you experience metabolic inflexibility, you want to try to let me know as well in the post. So by nature, when I see your picture, when I see your measurements, when I see where to advise from here, it would probably be clear to me whether or not you experience some metabolic, flexibility. And of course, I will advise what to do from here.